today at beginning chapter 3, the monster chapter, so to speak, and we're going to look at the first 20 verses. Sounds like a whole lot, but hang on, we'll talk about that. Title, Personal Sufferings. Chapter 3, remember, is the one with 3 verses associated with each of the 22 Hebrew letters, 66 verses in all. Sounds like a monstrous chapter, except for one fact. There are only 2 lines of the poem per verse, not 6 as before. Therefore, there are 66 verses times 2 lines per verse gives us 132 lines, which is the same as 22 times 6. So it's the same number of lines that we had in chapter 1 and chapter 2. Now, chapter 3 is, in fact, a bit longer, but not by a factor of 3, as the original description may have made it sound. So, this chapter is composed of 3 major parts: an individual lament, either the poet or Lady Zion. Then it moves to a communal lament, probably for the city of Jerusalem, but it could be all of Judah. And then it moves back to an individual lament once more. One of the differences in chapter 3, a flicker of hope begins to enter our scene. So, let's get on with it. Let's begin chapter 3. Aleph, verses 1 to 3. As I believe the poet is speaking, many believe him to be Jeremiah. Some even wonder whether this poem isn't as much about Babylon's destruction of Jerusalem as simply some major distressing event. I personally think it was about Babylon's destruction. Others believe the poet is personifying, there you go, too many syllables again, personifying Jerusalem, so that it is Jerusalem who is making lament. I think it's the poet, personally. I think he's speaking, and he's speaking about the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple. Well, let's begin with the first 3 verses. But since there are 2 lines per verse, the 3 verses will give us 6 lines. So I'm breaking up essentially just as we did chapters 1 and 2. I am the man who has seen affliction. Jeremiah certainly would have done that, but so would many others in Judah, or Jerusalem in particular. I am the man who has seen affliction because of the rod of his, Yahweh's, wrath. Verse 2, he has driven me and made me walk, where? In darkness and not in light. Verse 3, surely against me Yahweh has turned his hand repeatedly all the day. So I think this is a poet's individual lament. So let me do my thing with the 6 lines. I have already suffered too much, the poet says, because of Yahweh's wrath. He's speaking as if Yahweh's gone a bit too far in this discipline. Line 3, he has separated from the old ways. It isn't the same as the old times. And line 4, sending me into utter darkness. That essentially says he's sending me away from his presence. The temple's gone. The presence of God is gone from the temple, and he's sensing that darkness that results. Line 5, God's hand is against me, and the discipline is intended for those in Judah. Time after time he does this all day long. So he's not the only one to have had similar, exceptional, even excessive experiences. And you might guess who one of the guys would be. Job. I'm looking at Job 9:34. Let God, remove his rod from me. This is Job saying, I've had enough, Lord, please. And let not dread of him terrify me. He doesn't want his discipline, whatever it is. And in this case, it's not discipline. It's something totally different that God's doing. But he does not want to sense this from God to an extent that he will begin to dread and fear God as God would terrify him in this process. Psalm 89, verses 31 and 32, a psalmist has a similar thing. If they violate my statutes and do not keep my commandments, then I will visit their transgression with the rod and their iniquity with stripes. So the psalmist is agreeing in those two verses that whenever they sin as covenant people, they will be disciplined with God's rod. And Jeremiah 20, verse 7, O Yahweh, you have deceived me, and I was deceived. You have overcome me and prevailed. I have become a laughing stock all day long. Everyone mocks me. Evidently, Yahweh was disciplining Jeremiah. He sensed it. Everybody around him sensed it and started to make fun of him. So Jeremiah himself went through some of that with, he felt it was from God. So let's go to the second Hebrew letter, Bet, verses 4 through 6 of Lamentations 3. He has caused my flesh and my skin to waste away. Who's he? Yahweh. He has broken my bones. He has besieged and encompassed me with bitterness and hardship. In dark places, there's that darkness again, he has made me dwell. I'm dwelling without any sense of God's presence, like those who have long been dead. He said, so in the midst of this, I'm like a dead man walking. So let me again translate in some sense these 6 lines of the 3 verses 4 through 6. Yahweh has caused me to age, to wear out. He has brought me fever, pain. He fights me and hems me in. He is sending ultimate hardship my way. I remain in darkness as in Sheol, the grave, like those dead and forgotten. We see something like that in Isaiah chapter 38, verses 12 and 13. Isaiah speaks like this: like a shepherd's tent, my dwelling is pulled up and removed from me. As a weaver I rolled up my life. He cuts me off from the loom. From day and night thou dost make an end of me. I composed my soul until morning. Another individual lament. Like a lion, so he breaks all my bones. From day until night, you make an end of me. So Isaiah felt the same kinds of things that the people of Jerusalem were feeling. Let's go to Gimel, and verses 7 through 9. Again, 6 lines. He, Yahweh, has walled me in so that I cannot go out, I can't escape. He has made my chain heavy, whatever's holding him down and back. Even when I cry out and call for help, he shuts out my prayer. He has blocked my ways with hewn stone. That means stone that's been squared around and made into blocks so they can be set one on the other, heavy to move, hard to get through. He has made my paths crooked. I can't walk straight anymore. I have to always be dodging around as if I'm in a maze. So, let's take my version of those 6 lines. He has closed me in with no way of escape. He weighs me down with bonds. My prayers for help and relief seemingly fall on deaf ears. I am closed in a maze of fitted blocks. My paths are crooked. No straight way about this. Jeremiah must have had a similar experience of being hemmed in. Remember, he was thrown in a cistern one time. Jeremiah 38:6. Then they took Jeremiah, and here we are, and cast him into the cistern of Malchijah, something like that, the king's son. So this is a cistern belongs to a son of the king. I'm not sure which king this was, but it may be Jeconiah, which was in the court of the guardhouse. So they knew where this place was, and they threw Jeremiah in it. And they let Jeremiah down with ropes. Now in the cistern there was no water, but only mud. Well, that's good. At least he wasn't going to drown, right? And Jeremiah sank into the mud. Is he closed in? The walls of the cistern, which was probably round, but it could have been rectangular. But anyhow, Jeremiah is stuck there. No escape on his own. And by the way, if it isn't a cistern, as I think it was, he's going around and round and round in circles as he's stuck in the mud. As a matter of fact, he may not even be moving left and right. He just may be spinning. Well, let's go to verses 10 to 12 with Dalet. Lamentations 10:12. He is to me like a bear lying in wait. Who's waiting for him to ambush him like a bear would? Yahweh. Every one of these situations, they know it's God's doing. and they know it's for a reason. Like a lion in secret places. So he says it's like a bear waiting to ambush me. It's like a lion waiting to ambush me. He knows he's got a strong foe doing this to him. And Yahweh is at this moment as a foe. He has turned aside my ways and torn me to pieces. He has made me desolate. He bent his bow and set me as a target for the arrow. He said, God is out there. He's drawing his bow. His arrow's pointed at me. He's just waiting to let that go. Ooh. So, not a good feeling. Well, those statements from verses 10 to 12 seem to describe a path for this person full of danger at every point. So let me give you my versions. Seems like a bear waiting to ambush me. God seems that way. God seems like a lion doing the same thing. Something that man typically has difficulty dealing with. This is a dangerous situation. Line 3, I was dragged away and injured seriously. I was left without protection or help. God was everywhere my adversary. I was his target. Let's check a couple of other prophets as they prophesy in similar terms. I'm looking at Amos and Hosea. Amos 5, verses 6 and 7. Seek the Lord that you may live. Good advice, right? Lest he break forth like a fire. O house of Joseph. This was the northern kingdom that Amos was prophesying to. Lest he break forth like a fire, and it consume with none to quench it. And he says, if God turns this thing loose on you, nobody's going to stop it or break it. For those who turn justice into wormwood, that's a bitter herb or something like that. It's not worm, it's not wood, it's something bitter. And he cast righteousness down to the earth. So that's the people that Amos is speaking by. He's saying, God's coming to you with judgment. It's going to be like a fire. There's not going to be anyone who can put it out. God will have his way in his judgment of you. And in Hosea 13:8, Hosea also prophesying to the northern kingdom, I, Yahweh, will encounter them like a bear robbed of her cubs. So Yahweh is going to go there, but he's going to be like a mama bear whose cubs have been taken. And I will tear open their chests. There I will devour them like a lioness, as a wild beast would tear them. So God says, my judgment, my discipline, isn't something light. Verses 13 to 15 of Lamentations. H-E-H. Lamentations 3:15. To enter in, he made the arrows of his quiver to enter into my inward parts. Remember he said God had his bow drawn, his arrow aimed at him. He says, he got me good. I have become a laughing stock to all my people. Remember, Jeremiah went through that with his lament also. They're mocking song all the day. They're singing songs about me. He's filled me with bitterness. In other words, he said, because of God's discipline, I have become bitter. He has made me drunk with wormwood. So this guy is in a bad way. The three, from my point of view: Yahweh pierced my heart with his arrows. His aim was good. I became a laughing stock in the region. I mocked all day long, the butt of jokes and songs. I was filled with bitterness, with gall thrown in for good measure. Well, you remember Job? He felt a lot of the same way. Job 16:13. His arrows surround me. Yahweh's arrows surrounded Job. That's the way he described God's dealing with him at this time. Without mercy, he splits my kidneys open. He's just saying, man, this is bad. He pours out my gall on the ground. The gall, of course, is from the liver. Vav, verses 16 through 18. Lamentation 3:16 to 18. And he, Yahweh again, has broken my teeth with gravel. This is something that David asked God to do his enemies. Break your teeth, Lord. And so he said, whatever is being fed me, I've chewed on it. It's gravel. It's breaking my teeth. He has made me cower in the dust. I'm scared day in, day out. And my soul has been rejected from peace. There's no peace in me. I have forgotten happiness. I don't know. I can't remember what happiness was like. So I say, my strength has perished, and so has my hope from the Lord. This is a sign of almost beyond help. His hope is perished. So he doesn't see at this point any hope. Now that's going to turn around soon. So let me describe them as I see the lines. As if I'm made to eat gravel from mockery, I'm ground into the dust. Peace is nowhere to be found. Poverty makes me forget the good times. I am without glory at the pagan's level. I've lost everything I had hoped for from Yahweh. So he's lost hope that Yahweh will do something good for him. Now to verses 19 through 20. Zayin, Z-A-Y-I-N. Lamentations 3:19 and 20. Remember my affliction and my wandering. He's asking God to remember all of what he's going through. The wormwood and the bitterness, the gall, the bitterness. Surely my soul remembers and is bowed down within me. There's only 4 lines here in these 2 verses. Actually, it seems to me that verse 21 belongs here too. Would make 6 as we typically are, but 21 is actually a point of turning from this lamentation to the communal lamentation and turning from bitterness to hope. So we'll see verse 21 next time. But there are only 2 sets of lines here, so 4 lines from verses 19 and 20 that I describe this way. A plea to remember both suffering and error, Lord. Remember their bitterness, the suffering and the terror. Remember them well. And my Dan downcast soul. See what this bitterness has done to me, Lord. By the way, the word wormwood is neither worm nor wood, as I mentioned before, but it's a bitter herb used to make other things bitter. You'd wonder why, but sometimes, for example, do you like dark chocolate, bitter chocolate, rather than lighter colored chocolate? I've lost the name of it now. Sweet chocolate. So you can use herbs to make things bitter. Some translations have gall instead of wormwood, and gall is liver bile. So that's why once in a while you hear me switch wormwood for gall, because it's bitter. If you've ever eaten liver, you know how the taste is. Job 16:13, back to Job again. And we're not through with that. Job says, that's Yahweh, of course, arrows surround me. With a mercy, he splits my kidneys open. There's that phrase again, implying danger. Excuse me. He pours out my gall on the ground. So Job is saying, my guts are in bad shape, folks. Gall is used as a metaphor for bitter punishment, the extreme of a bitter experience. Job 20:25 gives us another version. It is drawn forth and comes out his back. I assume that's his arrow. Even the glittering point from his gall. So the point went all the way into his liver, he said, and is making him bitter inside. Terrors come upon me. So gall may be representing bitterness and poison. Psalm 69:21, for example. They also gave me gall for my food, and for my thirst they give me vinegar to drink. That, of course, is a messianic psalm. Hosea 10:4, they speak mere words with worthless oaths. They make covenants, and judgment sprouts like poisonous weeds in the furrows of the fields. Speaking of the behavior of the people of the northern kingdom, right before Assyria demolished them. Matthew 27:34, they gave him, Christ, wine to drink, mingled with gall, just as in Psalm 69. After tasting it, he was unwilling to drink it. He would not succumb. He would not succumb to their attempt to ease his pain. He said, no, I'm going to eke through it all. Acts 8:23. This is one, and probably Peter, speaking to Simon the Magus, the guy with magic who wanted to get the power of the Holy Spirit to lay hands on people and make them speak in tongues and so forth, as I recall. And it says, for I see that you, Simon Magus, are in the gall of bitterness and in the bondage of iniquity. Some people even believe that the hemlock that Socrates drank was called gall. I don't know about that at all. In a sense, the poet got ahead of himself here at the end. He's talking about God. Pay attention, God, to me. Pay attention to what I'm going through, my pain. everything I've lost, hope, peace, calm, all those things. What should the poet have done first? Well, that's what he's going to do back when he gets to verse 21. He's going to remember the character of Yahweh. And if you lose sight of who God is, you can imagine him being something other than he is while he's simply, but painfully, disciplining you. In a sense, these 4 lines could have been briefly given as the poet saying, look, Lord, I remember everything that's already happened above. I've remembered all the things that have led to this pain and suffering. So next time up, though, we're going to take a look at consolation and hope. It's beginning to raise its head in our next sessions. Might things really be looking up? Well,